People who have worked for the super rich, what have you seen? Story 1. Had a client who purchased a newly built penthouse apartment and wanted a jacuzzi on the balcony. It would have meant a structural column was needed in the middle of the balcony below, which the contractor who built the apartment block wouldn't go for as it would impact selling that apartment. Client buys the apartment below, approves the column, the jacuzzi is installed, then privately sells the apartment below. Voila, problem solved. A few years ago, a rich French guy opened a school. French people here might be able to connect the dot. A bit before the grand opening, the staff was having a small party on the roof and a rich guy came in. He asked them if they had everything they needed. Someone said jokingly that it was missing a jacuzzi. A few days later, a jacuzzi was delivered on the roof. That's pretty much the definition of having so much money you can do whatever you want. Story 2. The owner of my company had a customer pay off a giant debt by signing over a yacht to him. When he went to the marina to get the storage info transferred to his name and saw how much it cost to store the yacht there, he bought the marina. When I was a teenager, a friend's dad bought the marina where he docked his boat. He paid $500,000 for the business and collected $100,000 in fees per year. Expenses were $30 to $40K per year. He taught us the cost of capital, how much he would take as income, and the timeline for profitability. We were paid $5.15 to be janitors, paint, and power wash. The equivalent of an MBA finance course from that summer was infinitely more valuable. My old company owner did something similar. He couldn't find anywhere to dock his giant sailboat, so he started buying property along his cruising routes and built places for his boat to go. And that's how to stay rich after spending extravagantly. Yachts are expensive to maintain, folks. Story 3. The CEO of the company I worked for was the founder's son, not an unintelligent guy for the most part. His dad made him start with the most basic jobs in the company and work his way through the different departments. Managerial staff was ordered, upon penalty of termination, not to treat him any differently than a new hire. So when he became CEO, he wasn't a bad guy to work for. Now, this is a company of over 10,000. One night, I'm working overtime on this late shift and we get this call.
Hey, you guys got electrician?
The guy is clearly drunk. We have no idea who it is or why he's calling our maintenance/engineering group. We ask who he is and he informs us lightheartedly. He wants someone to take a ride to his house and figure out why the internet isn't working. This is an hour's drive away. I volunteer. I was bored off my nut anyway. I got to the house. The entry gate is smashed. A section of the White Horse fencing is gone, and the Jaguar is stuck in the field. Here in the house is dude, completely blasted. He's got a huge cut on his hairline. Are you okay, boss?
I'm fine. Why?
He asks, blood literally caked on his face. I accompany him to the bathroom and help him clean himself up, wash off the gash, and put some bandaging on it. Then I corrected the internet. Unplug, plug. As I'm walking out, he asks me to do a shot with him. I comment, worried about my job, that it might be a bad idea. He agrees and hands me the bottle. Take it home and do a shot later. Keep it. When I get back to work, I look the stuff up. Never heard of it. It's a $1,500 bottle of scotch. The next day I'm at work early. About 11 in the morning, he comes walking up. We're not gonna be talking about last night. I tell him it's all good. Awesome. A little bit later, I got an envelope. There's a check attached for emergency tech support for $5,000. Kind of a similar story, but my dad used to work for Getty Oil. J. Paul Getty III was made to do the same thing as far as working the little man's jobs to get a feel for how things really ran. Pops would tell us stories of how J. Paul would roll up to the oil rigs 2 to 3 hours late in a limo, drunk and blown out of his mind. He wouldn't do anything while at work, just watch. And at the end of the day, the limo would show back up with half-naked women in the car to take him out to party the night away. This was after he was kidnapped, and my dad said his missing ear was always crazy to look at. Story 4. I did a male nanny job for a rich couple who wanted someone to take care of their kids. The wife didn't want a female nanny, and I was in college, so it helped pay the bills. One day they asked, "Do you want to go to Hawaii?" Turns out the company that the husband was the COO of was doing an executive retreat in Hawaii. Instead of finding daycare in Hawaii for their kids, they thought it would just be easier to pay me to fly to Hawaii, care for the kids during the day, and then have my evenings or their family time free. So So I went to Hawaii on their dime, had my own hotel room, they paid for me the whole time and gave me a large stipend for my own food/entertainment. I ended up with pretty much every evening off, so I got to spend it. During the day, I brought their kids to the beach. We went hiking and did some touristy running around. On top of that, they gave me $5,000 in spending money in case any of the kids wanted anything. I had to show receipts, but when I tried to turn in the receipts, the wife just said, "Oh, don't worry about it, it's only a couple grand," and never verified how I'd spent some of that money. I couldn't tell if she just trusted me implicitly by that point, or if she truly thought the amount was so small it didn't matter. They were a really nice family, just very well off, which made just spending money on problems the easiest answer. I actually got invited to the oldest daughter's high school graduation because she considered me a friend. I used to watch a lot of kids in the neighborhood too when I was younger. 2 houses away from mine were 2 boys. I used to watch all the time as they had busy jobs and were politically involved in the evening. Was almost 2 or 3 nights a week at their place. The oldest is in uni too, and last year during the barbecue down the street, he said, "Man, you might have made as much of an impact on me as my dad, teaching me valuable things and respect." Never saw that coming, but damn, that hit me hard for a second. Sounds like a good night out if you ask me. Story 5. Did appliance repair. One lady had a 10 by 12 walk-in wine cooler, floor to ceiling stocked with wine, in her living room. Another person's house was made of imported stone and had a library the size of 2-car garages. My favorite was an old lady who just had nice stuff. She took care of what she had. Every time I went, she gave me $40 for a nice beer with your lady. I would always refuse, but she insisted and was basically the typical granny anyone would want. In a previous job, we gave free estimates as part of getting new customers. Did a minor construction repair estimate for a guy who'd retired to the US from being a journalist for Der Spiegel. Didn't even get work approved yet or anything. Just showed up, looked around, and wrote up the estimate. He gave us each $20 for a beer. The dude seemed to have a really deep appreciation for regular Joes. Don't know how wealthy he actually was, but I met several very wealthy people over the years with a similar attitude. Met some entitled pricks too. Some rich people are just oddly generous. Why didn't I ever come across any of them? Story 6. Worked in recruitment finding crew for super yachts many years ago. Put forward a candidate for a chief engineer on a very well-known yacht owned by a very well-known individual. Was the perfect fit of knowledge and experience, and the guy was super friendly and nice as well. They turned him down because he wears glasses, and the owner doesn't want anyone with disabilities working on board. To answer a few things that keep popping up, why didn't I tell the candidate so he could sue them? Is that even legal? I had signed various NDAs, so I would have been destroyed. I was told this over the phone, so there was no proof. They have a whole company of lawyers. If the candidate did decide to sue, he would have failed. The yacht industry is small, especially at the top end. It would have been the end of both of our careers. Neither of us would have worked in the industry again. They were registered under a different country's flag, so would have made it even more difficult. They could have paid for LASIK. This was over a decade ago, maybe 2. Yes, it was probably still available, but why the hell would they? It was one of the top jobs in the industry at the time, and they could have anyone they wanted. Why waste the money when they can get someone else who has the right knowledge and experience and fits their requirements? A lot of these rich types get the most perfect puppet-looking veneers, loads of hair dyes, Botox, and fake body parts, all to uphold this false sense of perfection they think everyone else is beholden to. Wouldn't be surprised if the owner naturally wears glasses themselves in private. It's crazy that some people can just have that kind of mentality. You'd think with all that money they'd learn some civic sense. Story 7. Redid a lady's shower one time during the middle of a nasty divorce. The shower was 6 by 10 with the entire ceiling covered in shower heads. Since he was off with half the office, I figured I'd get the other half all in here. Lady was a baller. $500 tip for everyone who worked in that bathroom because it was her ex's money. We redid the glass to her shower when I was at a glass shop. How the actual plumbing and stuff worked is beyond me. My job was to bring in giant panes of glass, attach them to the wall/floors, waterproof the seals, and dip. With how large her house was and the other 2 smaller houses that were attached, I'm sure she had enough money to throw at someone to solve these plumbing problems. And that's how you spend divorce settlement money, people. Story 8. I've heard there's a behavioral gap between the super wealthy and the absurdly ridiculously wealthy, where the latter become almost normal people. The former will be constantly trying to look rich, obsessed with appearances and status, etc. The latter will invite you over to watch Netflix wearing yesterday's shorts and ordering Papa John's for dinner. It's like they've been so rich for so long, some people just stop caring about it. I work in the auto industry and was visiting a luxury brand recently. Talked to the GM about the brand wanting certain things a certain way for their customers. He told me he read that a large number of wealthy people don't buy luxury cars. The rich buy nice cars. The wealthy buy dependable cars and yachts or planes. And I remembered back in my OEM days when the demographics of a car and its competition showed that Lexus 350 customers used 60% of their income on car payment. Millionaires definitely have a lot more to prove than billionaires. Maybe that's why. Story 9. I was the project manager for a mansion built for one of the founders of a major health insurance company here in the US. This guy was one of, if not the, best billionaires I've ever worked for. He showed up nearly every day in shorts and flip-flops and would treat us all like equal. This was around the time that President Obama was about to put out Obamacare. I was in a meeting with the owner and President Obama called him on his cell to discuss the plan. He, the owner, tells us to hold on, the president is calling, to which someone jokingly made a comment about, thinking he was joking. The owner asked Obama to say hi to the team, and he did. It was surreal to be at the table with him when the call came through, and an experience I will never forget. Sounds endearing, but I invite the reader to imagine this in the context where the gentleman does not have the charisma he has. Now think about the actual business practices of health insurance companies. Now think about what having direct access to the people who regulate this domain entails. A bit concerning, isn't it? That sounds like something straight out of Succession. Story 10. I briefly cleaned houses one summer, and these houses were insane. Some had elevators, some had stalls in their master bathroom, one had a literal cave manufactured in the bathroom with shower heads all throughout it. You could walk from one end and come out the other side of the bathroom split by a massive hot tub. What struck me as odd in almost every house was the sense of disuse. They had grand pianos covered in dust, expensive lamps and throw pillows with the tags still on them, sprawling playrooms with every toy any child could want, totally devoid of playing children. The weirdest house I cleaned, though, wasn't huge, and it wasn't gorgeous. It was pretty normal on the outside, but inside the entire house was filled with piles of clothes. Everywhere I pulled aside my fellow cleaner and asked, with all sincerity, how to clean this house. She told me to go around the piles as best as you can. They had a mountain of clothes in the living room, like something out of a cartoon. Every couch had stacks of brand new clothes with tags on them. They were the only folded clothes anywhere. In the bedroom, it was the same. Smaller piles in every corner. Couldn't fully open or close doors around them. The kids' bathroom didn't even have a shower curtain. Best guess after cleaning that house as best as we could is that they don't wash clothes. I think they just buy more and discard the dirty clothes into the piles. I think about that house a lot and wonder if they ever got their shit together. Sounds like compulsive hoarding. My neighbor is a compulsive hoarder. Came from a rough childhood. Ugly divorce, dad drank, mom had a mental illness. On trash night, she takes her truck out and picks up all kinds of stuff they don't need. I think she's added free Facebook Marketplace crap to her hoard. I counted 65 chairs and like 20 bicycles. Unloads her truck in the back and leaves all the crap out there, never using it. And it all gets ruined by the weather. Inside their house is the same way, just stacks of paper and junk. She still won't part with it. I'm about to call the city. She's nice, but it's a lot to look at, and we're worried about rats. Her husband and kids hate it, but she loses her shit when they try to talk to her about it. It is an illness, but she has no interest in treatment, so the city is going to have to force the first step. If you're rich enough to buy new clothes every day, why not just give the old ones away? Story 11. My brother-in-law builds custom homes in the redneck Riviera belt of Florida. One day, he called me to come over to this $15 million beach house he was doing a complete remodel of. He was the original builder. He asked me to bring my truck and trailer. I show up and he walks me through all 4 floors. He then says the owners have removed all the stuff they want to keep. She has told me to dispose of everything as I see fit. Go get what you want. Furniture, appliances, outdoor furniture, rugs, lamps, artwork, you name it. I don't know the value of everything I took home with me that day, but it was the highest end stuff I've ever seen. 4 floors of it, and I only got 1 trailer load because I simply couldn't fit anything else in my house. I likely had over $20,000 worth of furniture and appliances on that trailer. My brother created a custom-built cabinetry company out on 27A, populated it with pretty young women and architecture degrees from Ivy Leagues, and the money that the customers spent on just a library could top $500,000. Once the pretty young woman was done sketching, no one ever so much as blinked at the total number. I sold high-end area rugs for many years in Scottsdale, Arizona. I had a couple come in and select the Persian rugs to replace their existing ones. They chose the first option I showed them in the gallery, and their first choice of the 3, dropping more than $20,000 on a 9-foot 8-inch by 12-foot 3-inch Persian that was 120 kpsi. They had a $7,000 10 by 14 Indian-made Hariz that they couldn't handle removal of and asked, "Would you like this?" I still have that almost 7 years later. Kinda reminds me of the lady who found an $8,000 couch just sitting in the middle of New York City. Story 12. I worked on a billionaire's home installing his custom pool. He ordered a custom iridescent tile for the whole pool. It cost $440,000 for the material alone and another $400,000 to install it. We informed him that it was a special order and couldn't be changed once ordered. He approved. We installed it. Walks out. It looks amazing. All people working on it thought so. Says he doesn't like it. Tears it out and replaces it. All told, he blew like $2.4 million on his pool tile before it got done. Fucker didn't bat an eye. I've been friends with a very wealthy person through his son since we went to the same university. I was worried this was going to be a photo of his pool because his son was literally complaining about his dad doing something like that a year or so ago. My dad spent like $500,000 fucking dollars reflooring the pool twice because he didn't like it the first time. But when I suggest putting in lights and a sound system for the backyard, he thinks I'm wasting money when we have an iPhone speaker. That just sounds wasteful. Story 13. Years ago, I used to work carpentry, mainly doing sunrooms. One of our clients was a brain surgeon who was married to a lawyer, and they subsequently had a massive house on a large property. Their son was also some type of neuroscientist, and with his parents' permission, had yet another massive house built on the same property. The problem is, the city ordinances prohibit 2 separate livable dwellings on the same property. Mind you, these houses were about a quarter mile away from each other, so to comply with ordinances, they built a fucking wall between the houses. And this isn't just some dinky picket fence type of wall. It's a massive medieval style wall that has round towers with merlins and crenels, a gym midway through, and a massive $750,000 all glass sunroom, all the while being wide enough to have room for a walking path and a road for golf carts inside the wall. The city ordinance said only 1 livable dwelling can be on their property, so they just made a massive hallway between their houses. I mean, if you have the money, why not build your own castle? Story 14. I did carpentry for a summer to save up money for school. We would go to huge mansions and amazing houses that needed work done. Usually easy stuff, decorative things, so most times it would be 1 to 2 days of work. Most times we would work and the family would be home. It's not a problem, very normal. Once a family had kids and they watched a TikTok video on what poor people eat, and it was about how to cook things like 10-cent ramen and bread with sausages to make hot dogs. They laughed and thought it was fun, so they made the food to try in the kitchen. They hated it all. This was the food I grew up eating my whole life. That packet of ramen was the same as the dinner waiting for me at home. To put some perspective on this, it's not just a rich/poor thing. Your gut bacteria dictates what you find tastes good, to a certain extent. People that eat a lot of salads have gut bacteria that break that material down better, and that's what they crave. So someone who eats a lot of high-end food will generally not like the taste of low-end food and vice versa. I know several people who got rich, but never transitioned away from hot dogs and ramen because that's what tastes good to them. This is one of the factors in, oh, it's an acquired taste, because as you eat more of something, your taste buds get used to the new flavors, and you build gut flora that can break it down and request more of it. If I'd never eaten cheap ramen in my life, I'd probably also think it's disgusting. Story 15. My friend is a mechanic. A wealthy, fat, famous, and all-around unlikable entrepreneur came into his work one day and took a liking to his coworker. He asked my friend's coworker to come and work for him to maintain his car collection. It was really good pay, and he got to work on some cool cars, so he thought, why not? His days were spent working on old, rare sports cars on his sprawling property, but every now and again he'd get sent to Europe or the United States to check out cars the entrepreneur was interested in buying. He'd get sent to auctions all the time and ring up said entrepreneur while it was happening so that he could bid on the car on his behalf. Kinda sounds like Jay Leno. Story 16. Bartending at a fancy party in a very wealthy older couple's house where these people had art on display they had bought from museums. I was working in a room where 3 walls were glass and you could see this beautifully manicured garden with sculptures. When the sun started to set, these big floppy-eared white bunnies started to appear and frolic around the yard. I asked someone who worked in the house about the rabbits. The rich people bought them as a garden feature. Every once in a while they had to cull the rabbit population. The rabbits were decorations. This was also the night when I was making an older man a drink and he decided to ask me, "So what are the poor people doing tonight?" I feel like the older man was probably joking since he also felt left out. Story 17. I've done side IT work for various CEOs dozens of times over the years, and there are always common threads. It's always been male CEOs, and they genuinely seemed relieved to have someone in their house that isn't trying to negotiate or weasel something from them. They'll sit and talk with me, ask my career plans, how I got into the field, that kind of thing. The wives of said CEOs are all eerily similar. Lots of makeup, very strong opinions, very cold, and very standoffish. The garage always has at least one classic car, one sports car, and one car lift. There is always a golf cart on the property. The kids' rooms are always a mess. One guy was in an 18-plus room mansion, and his teen son had a mattress on the floor with clothes piled up everywhere. I had to hook up some wiring in there, and it smelled like his foot was in my face. If there was a dog or cat in the house, it's the most well-groomed animal you've ever seen. They always have a van service to come out once a week or so for grooming. Any mess will be blamed on the cleaning lady. She either hasn't come or missed something even though I didn't notice a mess in the first place. They tend to have the best of everything from stores/vendors you don't normally see. One CEO had a custom German sound system installed in his game room, which featured a bar, a snack bar, theater seating, cafe tables, and 2 fridges. The interface on his entertainment system was also custom made, and all the TVs in the house used the same interface. I've seen a glimpse of very sexy lingerie, leather straps, and chains hanging in closets. Freaky stuff happens. I'll always get an invite to go on a boat ride, plane ride, golf trip, whatever they're into. These invites aren't real. I think they do it to remind you they have toys. Yeah, a lot of rich families seem to follow a pattern. Go figure. Story 18. I am a dentist and used to own a dental office in an extremely wealthy area. I feel like really rich people come in 2 flavors, very humble and generous or just 100% a-hole. Most are the a-hole, not much in the middle. True wealthy people care a lot about time, not money. If there was any hiccup in a procedure or something wasn't correct, they would flip out. 99% of the issues that they would flip out about I could fix, but that meant they had to make another dentist appointment, which wasted their time. I hated working with rich people. The best day of my life is when I sold that dental office. Worked in food service in a very affluent area. My experience was the exact same. There are 2 types of rich folk. Those who are just straight assholes and think the world revolves around them, treat you like a servant. The other types were genuinely some of the nicest human beings I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. Some rich folks just seem to have great desire to make the world and the people around them a better place. For example, leaving a $100 tip on a $20 order. Some rich folks would tip $20 on a $2,000 order. Seems like money really brings out your true colors. That's why you tip on percentages, folks. Story 19. I used to work at a members-only golf/country club. There were members who had been actors, athletes, race car drivers, former CEO of Google, and some major money and egos going on. There was one family that had 3 teenage kids, 2 girls and a boy. The mom and the girls were very attractive and knew it. They always looked amazing and had overly entitled attitudes to match. They were fancy. Well, the lady who washed the linens for the country club also did house cleaning for some members. This family was one of them. She said their multi-million-dollar home was a disaster filth zone. They basically did no housework in between having the cleaning lady there. Dishes piled with dried food that smelled, dirty clothes thrown everywhere, piles of crap all over, sticky floors, and dog poop left on the floor. But the nastiest part was the bathrooms. She said they wouldn't empty their bathroom trash, and the ladies of the house would throw their used tampons on top of overflowing trash, so she had to pick up their used women's products thrown on the floor, not even wrapped in paper. So these fancy bitches would walk around the club like they were so superior and look down on everyone, then would go home and would act like wild apes, throwing their trash and period products on the ground. The thought of being so out of touch that you decide it's beneath you to even be sanitary because you can just pay someone to do that for you is just beyond insanity. Clean up after yourself. It's not that hard of a thing to do. Story 20. Worked as one of 4 full-time groundskeepers at a large estate, 46 acres of lawn to mow twice a week, 2 clay tennis courts, 3 pools, 1 for the main house and 1 for each of the 2 guest houses, 100+ acre private lake with boathouse. No clue how big the whole estate was, including the woods. My personal favorite was the 3-mile personal racetrack, but what really blew my mind was that he hosted his niece's wedding one summer, paid $350K to have this massive willow tree trucked in and planted by the lake for the wedding photos, only to pay another $50K to have it removed and the landscaping returned to its original state after the wedding because he did not like the look of it. At that level of wealth, your job is simply owning and continuing to amass wealth. To the extent that you do any work, it's stuff like sitting on boards of charities or nonprofits, attending parties or events to hobnob with other rich people, stuff like that. There might be some select people in this bracket who ostensibly made their wealth from working, founders of highly successful companies, but the vast majority of individuals in this bracket are probably coming from inherited wealth. I've done my share of landscaping for rich people, not the run-of-the-mill McMansions, buy houses tucked away with driveways that measure in miles. I feel like the sole purpose of these people's houses is to host weddings. It's all a contest to them. I'll never understand the concept of owning a house so big you don't even get to enjoy it. Story 21. I'll change a few details to protect the innocent, but I used to give guitar lessons in a very rich area, and the company I worked for had a lot of celebrity and/or just ridiculously rich clients. I saw in-home rivers, elevators, waterfalls, live-in chefs, 40-car garages, fully automated mansions that could change the season, indoors, etc. The thing that stood out most to me was the boredom of humanity. Like one guy I became friends with had 17 off-road vehicles, a house bigger than his Lakers star neighbor, and his Chicago Bulls star neighbor for that matter, and traveled to different extreme game competitions every weekend. But when I came over for the lesson, he just wanted to talk about Nirvana, watch TV, learn Pearl Jam bass riffs, and go to shows. The second thing that stood out to me was that the ratio of cool people to screwed up people seemed relatively the same between the super rich and the normies. Like there was one guy who wanted lessons with his very young son to connect with him, but it only lasted 3 minutes every lesson before he had to take an important call or run off to an emergency board meeting. You could see the kid was in a giant playground of a mansion, but was just crushed. However, I also gave lessons to a family where the parents were 2 high-powered lawyers, one of whom is now running for Congress, and they were absolutely amazing to those kids. Always attentive, would drop calls from celeb clients to fix a tricycle wheel, would lovingly enforce homework rules, etc. Great people. That was about the same ratio among my middle-class clients and amongst my poor clients. The last thing that stood out as the one really obvious advantage to being rich was the people's physical appearance. By and large, they were almost all very good-looking people at any age, and most without surgery. It's actually kind of incredible what the body can do when you're able to always feed it healthy foods, live-in chefs, exercise whenever you want in a variety of ways with or without leaving your home, in-mansion gyms, indoor-outdoor multi-tiered waterfall pools, week-long skiing trips, personal trainers, etc., and the lack of daily grinding mental stress. I'm not saying they didn't have stress or they didn't work hard, but most did not have that existential stress about what might happen if they got fired because they didn't work the extra Sunday, or the stress of a boss breathing down their neck when you're at a dead-end job just hoping for a living wage. There is something to be said for the mental benefit of hope and joy and inner calm, and unfortunately money does help with those things. So I did see a large health benefit to people with loads of money also. And lastly, I don't believe any of these people were self-made. This type of wealth is not just working hard and climbing the corporate ladder using nothing but your bootstraps. This type of money is generational wealth with decades-long investment accounts from things set up by ancestors. I'm not saying they haven't worked hard, but turning $100 into $1,000 and turning $100 million into $110 million are two very different things, and the latter is inarguably easier from both a percentage and opportunity standpoint. I think it's fascinating how human mentality mostly stays the same regardless of your income. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a similar story that you would like to share, please leave it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please leave us a like and subscribe. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.